And welcome to another Biddle for Saturday, April 11th, 2020. How's everybody doing?
Wonderful.
Doing great, Rocco.
Very well,
Great.
Well,
Quite
we are
well, thank you.
a minute late, and that's my fault. You can blame me this time. But we are officially open for business on this special edition of BDLL Europe for those people that don't want to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to participate in BDLL. All right. Normally on BDLL Europe, I try to make it different than the regular BDLL so that it's not the same show. Obviously, it's not always the same people, so that's what I have going for me. But there are people that do try out the Distro challenge that want to talk about it. So if you've tried out the Distro this week, which is Q4OS, and would like to talk about it, please raise your hand so that we can talk about it. Because you may not make it back for the regular BDLL and want to get your opinion out on it. But I don't think we need to. For those of us who are going to be at the regular BDLL, I don't think we need to do a full deal with it.
Rocco, since this is the Europe edition, we haven't done it since last month.
Correct.
We did do Linux Mint Debian edition, and I don't know if we caught Arco as well. Anyway, I'm not trying to make it a big free for all. I just didn't know if any.
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, dude?
Just that if anyone here hasn't,
say about me, yeah.
You mean the 3 weeks prior since
yes.
the last? Oh yeah, you're right.
Yes.
No, it's perfectly fine. I think the BDLL Europe ends up being a really down to earth and open format. So whatever we want to talk about is whatever we want to talk about. All right.
Well, Distro Tony's got his hand up, and so has Troy. So there's a couple.
All right, so let's start with Troy. Troy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
So you want to talk about Q4OS, right?
Yes.
All right, dig it.
Yeah, I got my notes over here on my other monitor. Let's see. First thing I did was the Plasma install. I manually installed it manually partitioned it. I kind of actually like the net installer style, like when it installs the desktop environment, so that way it pulls down all the latest right at the time of install. I don't know, let's see. It did detect that I was in VirtualBox, but it gave me an error that it couldn't register the resizing and display changing modules, whatever, for VirtualBox Manager. I also couldn't get Steam or Penta to install, which is interesting. I don't know if because
I did not.
I don't think it's designed for game. Yeah, I don't think this OS is designed for gaming because I also tried to install Lutris and then it complained about missing a lot of i386 libraries.
Right.
And for some reason, it only had the stock Debian wallpapers in the Plasma version, which was weird.
Yeah, I think it's maybe more. I think Q4OS like to think themselves as a bit of a business type application for businesses rather than the desktop end users. Maybe I've seen a lot of that on their website, that they offer very good business support. So I think they start with the very, very basics and leave it up to the user to put what they want on.
Yeah. And then I also tried the Trinity Desktop. That reminds me a ton of like Windows XP and stuff. Like it feels like Trinity was their flagship desktop, and like I said, it felt like the what was it called? The KDE one, Plasma, just felt like it was KDE installed on top of Debian. That's all it felt like to me.
Yeah, well, Trinity was based upon KDE 3. It was forked, I think, from KDE 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, yeah, the sound effects reminded me of Windows. Their appearance changer reminded me of Windows. I like their wallpaper selection. Like I even have one of their wallpapers as my background for my green screen in this video, as you can see. And for some reason, whenever I rebooted the virtual machine, it always forgot the custom desktop resolution. So it always reset it back to like 800 by 600.
Well, Q4OS was designed to be, I was actually forked from KDE 3.5. And then, according to their website, and I can't find it right at this moment, but they talk about how they have done a lot of things to the code to where it's pretty much its own thing now. So, but it is still based on the Trinity Desktop specifically is based on, older packages and older stuff. So you're probably going to have problems with Lutris and Steam and those types of issues. But again, it's not, I don't think it's primarily designed for that anyway. It's designed, as Zeb said, it's designed for a business standpoint. But can I just say that I installed it on the test machine and, like I have two 4K monitors, right? So the main machine has one and the test machine has one. And this is the first distro that I have ever tried that actually had a pop-up as soon as you booted into the live USB, sorry.
Yeah.
It popped up a box that said, hey, we noticed you're running a high DPI monitor. Would you like to scale the monitor? And I was blown away. I mean, this is something that I think should be in every distro in Linux right now. And it may be a KDE specific app. It may be something that they developed. I'm not sure. And I'm not even sure how hard that would be to implement into something today. I have no idea. I'm not that technical. Maybe somebody else can answer that. But that is such an awesome feature that I never thought I would see on a Linux distro. And Q4OS of all things has that. And there was a few other pop-ups. We noticed you're running an NVIDIA graphics card. Do you want to download the NVIDIA drivers? Little things like that were awesome to see. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty decent. I only tried the Trinity Desktop environment, and although I did start on KDE 3.5 when I started in Linux, I probably don't want to go back to KDE 3.5 in Linux, so that's just my personal taste. But I do plan on trying the Plasma version this week and see how that works out.
But it's interesting on both the KDE and the Trinity version that neither could cope with my new RTX 2080. I had to go through the hoops that I went through with MX before they had the accelerated hardware support, and I had to jump into a DOS prompt as it was load up the install recommends, NVIDIA driver, NVIDIA settings, DKMS, and all that sort of stuff before I could get to the desktop. But what I found really, really interesting was I was installing it on an old i5 with a 1 terabyte spinner and a 8 gig of memory. And it said, oh, we notice your machine is powerful enough. Would you like to run Plasma? So I think they might be moving away from Trinity and promoting Plasma.
Their beta version, which is version 4 that I'm actually installing right now to check on, it's Plasma, and I don't think they have any plans of using Trinity for that.
Yeah,
so I think you might be right.
Yeah, and the problem with their beta version is it's very, very buggy. I mean, I've got it up and running and installing, but every time I start it and try to use their applications to run anything, it says, oh, I'm terribly sorry, we're installing NVIDIA drivers. Please wait while we finish. But they're already installed and already running, and I can ignore that and bypass it and go to the DOS prompt.
Well,
DOS prompt,
I didn't have a problem with the
command
NVIDIA
prompt.
drivers, Zeb, with the 1080, but I didn't try it on the main machine with the 2080 like you have, so that may be one of the reasons why it was okay for me.
Sure.
Tony, sir, Bearded Wonder.
Thank you, Roger. Well, I did install it on my test Dell laptop again, which is the laptop that had LMDE4. And I came across the same problem as last time. At first boot, it told me invalid boot partition. It hadn't flagged the drive as boot drive. So I had to stick, and there is no G-parted on the live ISO. So I had to go and get a Mint 19.3 ISO on a stick, live ISO on a stick, and go into G-parted and flag the drive before I could get it to boot. So that was one little hiccup. The other thing is, it's not very clear. You get the welcome menu at the beginning, or the welcome screen with various options, one of it which is to install your proprietary drivers. One of them is to configure your desktop environment. but it doesn't tell you that if you don't do this, there's a lot of software that you're not going to get. And I came a cropper with this. Go on.
Yeah, but it does that during the install. After you've installed and you've rebooted, it says, please pick your desktop environment. Or it did with me.
Yeah, when I did the install on the, I've got it installed on my main machine as well as a dual boot, and I picked the install the full desktop version. So that wasn't an issue because all the software was installed during the install. But on the laptop, I'd forgotten to tick that box. So it just did the minimum install. And then I tried to install Zoom, and because it was missing some of the software it needed, I couldn't install Zoom. And then I twigged what was wrong, went back into the welcome menu, installed the software I needed through the welcome menu, and then Zoom was able to be downloaded and installed because I'm on it now. So I'm also running that beta, the Q4OS, the beta version, the latest one.
Yeah, I think you're right. They could make the welcome screen a little bit more informative, because all it says is run desktop profiler. Well, what does that mean and what does it do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
If I can ask you guys, when you're looking at this, and maybe you can talk about it a little bit, the idea that the reason we are testing it, or the reason we are testing Q4OS, because we got an email to asking us to test it for a specific business, government business. So I'm basically asking you guys, when you're looking at it, would you set this up on a business, or looking at it from that standpoint, what would be wrong with using this in a business? Because they do offer support for businesses. So,
well, given that most governments that I know that I was working with until 5 years ago were still running XP, this is going to be brilliant. It's solid, it's Debian, it works, it's going to support all the old hardware, because you can bet your bottom dollar they're not going to be running the latest and greatest. So in that regard, everybody knows that Debian is rock solid and stable. So I see no reason why this can't be viable. I've not had a full chance though to test all the business type software on it, but from a stability point of view, I think it could be very good.
It's a good point, because if they are coming from XP, which could possibly be the case, then this would make sense for someone, because it would be familiar. And I do like that. So it might be a little confusing, that the terminology they're using, but I do like the fact that you just get a base install and then you can choose, how much of this do I actually want? It's kind of like the Ubuntu installer and saying minimal install versus the full thing. I like having that choice. And so I think that's a smart play from that perspective. I mean, if they have business support, that makes perfect sense, because they're probably going to need it. And if they have any kind of management tools, or I just haven't dug in enough, Rocco, to really know,
And it depends on what sort of dialogue they're going to be opening up with that government's IT department, how much they will be offering to help mold it, meld it, provide them an ISO that they can roll out to every single machine. Not sure how they're going to do it. So,
well, I think that it's not a bad option, especially because they offer the support. But my question, I guess, is, would there be too much setup involved for a business, not specifically in the desktop, but would you recommend businesses use Conqueror for their browser and Conqueror for their file manager and stuff like that? So,
but I think to Zeb's point, you could probably customize it and then create an image from that customized
well,
desktop.
that's what I'm asking. Is that too much setup to go through, or maybe is there another option to use?
We've
Not
got
if they
a perfect
support
example here. We've got Mr. Alan Pope, who's probably been involved in some of this with the Ubuntu team. So how much did the Ubuntu team get involved in providing that setup support for a company that comes to you guys and says, hey, we'd like to use Ubuntu in our organization? Is there a lot of that interplay between the company and Ubuntu?
That's a good question. I was just about to take a sip of beer then, and you threw me. So it's difficult because I don't work in the department that have commercial relationships with organizations.
Right.
But I know a lot of people say Canonical makes all this money from server stuff and desktop doesn't make any money. That don't believe anyone who tells you that. We do have customers who have deployments of Ubuntu, and we have potential customers who tell us they would like to, but they need feature X, Y, Z, or they need it to be able to do certain things. And some of the changes that we've made to Ubuntu Desktop over the last 2 years are directly as a result of people who want to deploy Ubuntu at large scale on desktops. We even had a large software company you have heard of, all of you have heard of, come to us and say they have customers who have Ubuntu and they would like us to help them improve Ubuntu in some particularly measurable and interesting ways so that their customers can use Ubuntu. And what was interesting about that was the company we were talking to have their own operating systems, and yet their customers are asking for Ubuntu. So that's quite nice. Don't bother speculating. You just guess to yourselves.
Right.
I got a bit of the other side if you guys want to hear it, the admin side.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I think because of its Debian base, you're going to have a really easy time deploying this. You've got tools like Ansible is my favorite, but you have SaltStack, and you have all of the other different kind of configuration management softwares out there. The one trouble that you got to figure out is how to get the image onto the machines that you're trying to deploy this on. And there are tools for that too. I mean, obviously Foreman can do that for you, or as y'all were talking about before, you could just spin an ISO, have someone manually install that. And then once you get it installed and on the network, Ansible can take over from there and say, all right, here's the list of packages that we need for this particular machine, go. But that's not a Q4OS thing, that's a Debian thing or an Ubuntu thing. And since this is based on Debian, Ansible obviously supports that as well. So I think once you get it kicked off, that's the real challenge. After that, Ansible or some other configuration management software can take over and make sure that all your machines are always up to date, because you've got apt, you've got snap, and you've got flatpak underneath that you can put in there. Snap and flatpak aren't in there on the install that I went through, the basic Q4OS.
Actually, Leah, sorry, just to interject. I noticed that Snapd was updating whenever I installed.
Okay, so it must be because I chose the basic.
Well, no, this is on the beta, so I'm thinking maybe the beta has Snap.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one, huh?
No, you're on the right one.
No, you're on the release.
You're on the major release.
I just tried the beta because I did think it was funny because I saw Snapd updating on it. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, the cool thing about Ansible is that you can use Ansible to install Snap to then install more software. So there's plenty of this ability, and because you said this is going to be in a corporate environment, that means there's an IT group that can spin up Ansible and make all this work, or the Q4OS guys can figure out how they're going to do that with support, obviously. But
I just
definitely doable.
I can't think in the real world of any genuine case scenario where a corporate entity would turn around and say, let's put Q4OS on our business.
It came as a surprise to me, but
yeah, I can't. If somebody said we're going to dump Microsoft and go to Ubuntu, I get it. Somebody says we're going to dump Microsoft or Apple or whatever, and we're going to go to Debian, I get it, no problem. Q4OS is a real niche distribution, so I can't imagine a company, a corporate entity saying, okay, let's go Q4OS.
Well, I think you're right.
Let's go Salient OS.
EB, I think you're right as far as if it was some major corporation with thousands of employees, or but what if it was a corporation or government entity that was in a different country that didn't have the major infrastructure that bigger countries do, or if it was a company that was a few people and they don't know where to start, or they see Q4OS. They see Q4OS as a viable option because they offer support.
And are you basing that statement? Yeah, and are you basing that statement, EB, because you've looked at Q4OS and you've gone, nah, ain't all that? Or have you really looked at the website and looked at their reviews and looked at the forum websites and all of the good press that they're getting from companies. There might only be small companies who've gone to them and got that back end support.
Are they paying for that back end support?
Of course they will be.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Okay. So that's a completely different. So we're talking about a pure commercial application here.
Right.
We're
No,
not
it's
talking
purely
about
commercial, but they can make it commercial. That's how they offer it.
Right. Okay. I just can't. Coming from a corporate background, obviously not a massive one, a medium-sized company, IT for 30 years, all the rest of it. I could see. For me, from the IT side, you want reliability and scalability. From the company's point of view, you want improved productivity, you want reduced costs and as low maintenance as possible. So for me, from a corporate point of view, Ubuntu would be the perfect solution.
Yeah, but that's a massive multi-billion organization.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm talking about medium-sized companies here.
But what's to stop a small company like Q4OS being able to offer that scalability, that support, that assurance that it's all going to work?
Because can they offer the assurance and the support? Most SMEs, tiny companies, will run something like Sage plus Sage Payroll. Do you have complete compatibility with that? You can't run the financials of a company off a Q4OS. It might work. The guy say it could. You have to have that dependability in a business. You have to be able to pay people. You have to do profit and loss sheets, forecasts, etc. Business
and
analysis.
That's what this company will have to go and ask of Q4OS. We are just saying, and as a product.
All I'm saying is, I'm not belittling. I'm just saying, for me, Q4OS is a niche distro. So therefore, it would be like somebody say, you say the entire OS in your business. Oh, yeah, okay.
It's more than a one-man band.
Well, and that maybe that's the. So this is the opportunity that some companies have in open source, right? Is that they can now. I think Q4OS is a little different because they've rolled their own desktop. Which, if they were truly just focused on the support side of it, then maybe it would make more sense to be a contractor that's using something like Ubuntu and then providing that service. So the tie-in between creating their own desktop and then supporting it is a little. I mean, I kind of get where you're coming from, EB, because I do think, like, why would you choose that over something else? And it's hard to say. Maybe they specifically talk to these people. It's a fair point, and I really don't know.
No, it's not critical. I think it's fantastic. I just find it a little peculiar that you'd pick Q4OS for any time. But again, for me, Ubuntu would be the ideal choice because we all know, whether you like it or not, Ubuntu's got one of the greatest hardware compatibilities on the planet. So if you've got network printing, even if it's only 2 or 3 people, chances are with Ubuntu, it's pretty much going to work. Debian, that can be flaky at the best of times.
So I think there's a huge number of small businesses, and small as in like less than 10 people. There's thousands of these tiny little mom and pop companies who have no IT resources whatsoever. They might have a computer in the warehouse and a computer in the office and maybe a couple of others for admin stuff. And likely they've purchased these devices organically over time. They didn't go and buy a fleet of computers. They organically bought them and they've evolved, and they probably know some local IT person. And there are so many of those that there is the opportunity for smaller distros and smaller niches to service those, because a lot of the larger ones, it's not financially viable and practical to service some tiny little company, because the amount of phone calls you'd get, and you wouldn't be able to get on site to them and solve their problems for them. I think it's perfectly reasonable that there is some level of company that's quite small that would find value in a niche distro. I'm not necessarily saying Q4OS, but something that's not mainstream. I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Well, and you look at, to me, I think of someone like Zorin, and they're doing the grid approach where they're actually trying to create tools to manage a full desktop environment, multiple desktops in a organization. And I think, so you kind of see these smaller distros finding ways to, I guess, penetrate that space and offering maybe something that's a little more like, we talked about the idea of customizing the desktop. Maybe Q4OS is able to work with a company and make very specific changes for their project very quickly, versus someone like Ubuntu who's taking these suggestions and obviously going to roll them in, but it's going to be over time. And I'm not speaking, maybe they do customizations, I don't know, but it could just be that they're more agile, they're more able to quickly adapt. And
well, that's exactly what it says on their website, that they are willing to make any sort of system customizations, including core level API programming, as well as user interface modifications.
Yeah,
so
if
they're offering that little service.
So think like if a company has systems and they're on XP right now and they want to switch to a Linux distribution, and some of their systems for whatever reason have requirements, then based on what Zeb just said, maybe this Q4OS could actually do some sort of custom programming and development for them so that it actually works seamlessly. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a thought. Debian is used hugely in NASA, at NASA in the sciences. And there are distros that are focused for the science community. But one of the major ones we don't have anymore, which is Scientific Linux. So a lot of the people that run telescopes and whatnot are switching over to other versions of Debian because of that. And I could see this being highly useful for, being able to, hone software just for a certain application.
Well, yeah, Chris Titus is in the chat. He said he might join us, but he mentioned RHEL. And I mean, I think that, like I said, I don't know the reasons why this company or this business wanted us to, or is looking specifically at Q4OS. They asked us to try it, so that's what we're doing, and I'm trying to get us to look at it from that standpoint of a business, of an entity, to say, would we put this on? And again, that I think my personal preferences with the Trinity Desktop are, I wouldn't use it, but looking at it from a company standpoint, coming from XP, and not having to retrain everybody to figure out where things are and what it looks like, it may be a good option.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Rocco, you have to bear in mind as well, although I'm talking about Sage Line 50 or QuickBooks or Quicken from Intuit, some of these may well, especially Sage, may well now be a web-based application, in which case it's platform irrelevant. So Q4OS may be a viable option for somebody's business somewhere. I was just making the point, I wouldn't have thought it'd have been at the top of anybody's list, no matter how tiny the business is, as a business operating system. But hey, I could be wrong. I could be totally, utterly wrong.
Well, there you go thinking again, EP. There's the problem.
Did any of you try the software installer?
Yes, but it doesn't work on the latest version because it's sitting there. It's sitting there to me saying, "Just a moment, I'm installing your video graphics driver, so I need to report a bug on that because it just won't work."
I went to do it didn't work for me either, but I went to do Firefox to install it, and it popped up with a very Windows-esque installer.
Yeah, I was gonna.
And I thought, is this running Wine? What is this? And it's not. It's just their package installer literally looks like a Windows installer.
Yeah, I went down the list installing, started with Chrome, Firefox, because I went with that middle installer. Discover wasn't installed at the very beginning, so I installed that and just kind of went down the list. And yeah, every single one of them looked like that Nullsoft looking installer that's been around for years and years in Windows. Yeah.
I couldn't find Firefox in the main repos. I had to go and install the snap to get Firefox.
Did you try the so that welcome screen has install applications under there, Tony? That's where it listed Firefox.
Did, yeah, I didn't do that one this time. I did it previously on another install, but not this time.
Gotcha.
And so that may be where it was then.
Did anybody try out app images?
I did not.
Not yet, no.
I
But
had to,
regardless of whether their application package works, you can still just go plain old sudo apt install, and Firefox installs,
Yeah.
Snaps installs. The Snap packages just run exactly the same. Everything runs fine, but you have to do it from the command line because at the moment in their beta, it's not quite right.
Joe,
Yeah.
you tried app images?
I did, but I had to use what was it, no tac sandboxing in order to get it to work correctly because of some permission problems in TMP.
Can I just say that if we're looking at this from a business case scenario, if this was installed by your IT department or the guy who's doing the IT, a lot of this, what we're talking about just at the moment, would be irrelevant because most companies would lock down the actual PC that the actual user was using and they wouldn't be able to install software. So it would be the IT department, like you say, either making an image or doing the necessary installs.
Yep.
And then a lot of this issue would be irrelevant.
Did any of you guys
Very
have any
good.
crashes with it? I know I did have one crash when I went to update.
Several.
It popped up a bug reporting system. The Trinity Desktop crash handler asked me to report the crash and then said I couldn't report the crash because it didn't have something installed. But I just wanted to know, like, stability wise, what do you guys have for it?
Well, I've only been using it fully for a couple of hours because I only bothered to go through the command line install for. But since I've been on here, I've been on Zoom. I installed most of the apps that I need, and touch wood, so far it's working okay. But until I've tried to really hammer it from a, let's put Office on here, let's put something else on here, let's try and do multiple things at the same time that Office workers do, and then just complain that the machine is slow. Well, you've got 14 Excel spreadsheets open. What do you expect? So. Not that they're going to have Excel open on here, but you know what I mean. So I haven't had a full chance, but I have not had one crash in 3 hours.
I have had several crashes, but part of my problem is that I'm doing this on a tablet computer, and for some reason the KDE version just doesn't seem to like the gyros. So if it gets to the point where it's going to rotate until I disable the gyros, it would lock up the keyboard and the mouse, and sometimes it would even lock out the USB 3.0 port, and either it would come back or it would crash.
Oh.
Anybody else?
I haven't had any crashes. I'm just running it in KVM virtual machine. So, but I wanted to. So Troy said it was very Windows-esque. The sound, that startup sound is, unless I'm mistaken, it's actually the old KDE startup sound.
I didn't hear the sounds because I don't have a headset or speakers hooked up to this computer. So
when I first heard it, I laughed, like literally laughed out loud because I haven't heard that sound in so long. And I was a big KDE3 user back in the day, so that was there's something sort of like, that you remember things by sound and taste and like that kind of thing. It was just like took me back. Like, boom.
Hey, Chris.
So.
Hey, how's it going?
What's happening?
Oh, not much, man. So you guys were talking about commercial products and utilizing Linux in a business, and I was like, hey, that's right in my wheelhouse.
Well,
I thought
let me set the stage a little bit for you because I don't know what you heard, but we received an email from a entity looking at us, asking us to try Q4OS and basically giving our opinion on it from a business standpoint if they should go that route because Q4OS offers support and whatnot. So that's why we're trying Q4OS. So now you can give your opinion.
Okay. Yeah. So like a little background on me. I've been in IT for 20 plus years, and I've used Linux servers for probably about 10 of those years. And Linux desktop, I haven't done very many implementations of in a whole business because most times you got, you guys know the shtick with that Microsoft Office and other things that they're always looking for. But that's not to say they haven't been used. And when I hear like Q4OS kind of popping around, I'm like, that's just not something as like an IT manager or a director I would even consider because it's just such a small company. Like you'd want somebody that has been proven for 10 plus years before you even think about jumping in that. I mean, how old is the Q4OS project?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah, so like
I was using it when it first came out, probably, well, when I first discovered it about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's been around a while.
Yeah, but I mean, in the business realm, you really want somebody that's been in the market pretty much since the beginning. So, like, even you guys know how much I'm not a big fan of Ubuntu. I would choose Ubuntu over that product just because I would want a big company that would be there just for the support aspect of. And then also you have like if you didn't want to go that route, you still have RHEL and other things like Red Hat Enterprise Linux that has the entire support model, and that's basically how they started with their whole company. A lot of RHEL based stuff, all their subscriptions based on actually getting a person on the phone and getting support. So, and that's really powerful. So that whole support model's already been flushed out in bigger companies. Why would you choose a smaller company? So really, as a decision maker in a business, why would I ever think to choose Q4OS against an Ubuntu or a Red Hat? And that's like the question.
Yeah, well, because as somebody said earlier on in the show, that sometimes the larger the company, the less personal support and help you can get. So if you go to somebody like Red Hat and say, "Hi, we're an organization. We've got 6 users. Can you set us up? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you give us the support, please?" Would they be saying, "No, here's the product. Use it. We'll support that product"? Whereas on the Q4OS website, they say they are willing to make modifications, adjust the program, work with your IT department, including core level API. So sometimes that smaller company, if you are a smaller company, you can end up getting a better service. But we hear you 100% where you're saying, RHEL has been there from day one, but what does, with all due respect, what does RHEL now care about a little 6-person company? If they are a 6-person company, we don't know. But even if they're a 20-person company, would they be able to give that personal level of support?
Yeah, well, don't forget Red Hat Linux. Everybody thinks Red Hat Linux started off as a business operating system for servers. It didn't. Red Hat Linux began its days as an EPOS provider for electronic point of sale using Red Hat Linux as the back end for the EPOS devices. It then developed into the corporate side. Everybody forgets that.
Yeah, but when it comes down to it, though, guys, you're going to have somebody on site that's setting this up. Nobody just out of the blue, a 6-person mom and pop shop that doesn't know anything about Linux and knows anything about it, decides to choose Linux. Like, you have to have some kind of gateway there. There's got to be someone like me that sets this stuff up for them. And you think just somebody's going to out of the blue discover it. I just don't see that scenario ever happening or playing out in my head.
So the person that asked us to look at this obviously had a reason to. And the other thing is, I think we're also speculating quite a lot about the capabilities of Q4OS, their team, their backend, like what they've got in terms of support and deployment resources. And, they've been around for at least 6 or 7 years. And, maybe this is exactly their wheelhouse. This is their market are these types of situations. And I don't know.
That's the other thing, Eric. We're also guessing on, the business itself. We don't really have any details of how many people they employ, how many computers they have, anything like that. So we're kind of just like in a.
We're also guessing at the needs of the business, whether that business is regulated to some level by, local laws and regulations that would affect the software choices they're able to make or should be able to make.
Well, I mean, I mean, when I say I've been in IT for 20 years, I started out as a contractor. So I've been in no less than 100 businesses, and I've set up probably about 50 or at least half of the ones I have been in. And I just don't see that, someone like me has to set this stuff up. They're not going to just walk a mom and pop. There's just no discovery. There's no lead there. There's no generation. I mean, I guess cold calling, but people, whenever you ask a mom and pop, "Hey, do you know what even Linux is?" They're like, "I don't know. What's Q4OS?" So what I'm saying is there's just no market there. You have to have some kind of
There is a market for Debian-based OSs. And that is
Sure.
huge. Again, in the
Yeah.
scientific community at NASA, I
Right.
live right by SpaceX.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And there
No
must be a
doubt.
market there.
They're
And-
all
This
Yeah,
this
but
email
yeah.
rocket scientists.
specifically
Hold on,
asked us to look at it.
Stand by.
There must be a
Jill.
market there in this particular instance, because this particular email said, we are looking at Q4OS. Can you have a look at it and give us your opinion? So someone somewhere within that organization, maybe a Linuxy person, has said, look, this company seems to be okay. What do you think? Shall we go and have a look at it? And then for some reason they came to us and said, could we give it a roo? Just because you personally can't see there's somebody who wants it in the marketplace doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can also give you a very interesting high-profile case where the Q4OS scenario has happened. And Easnix will know all about this. The amazing Astrolinux. President Putin said, right, we're getting rid of Microsoft, and they did their own iteration of Debian, which is very similar to Q4OS. And you can now watch RT Today on YouTube, and in every single Putin interview, you will see a computer screen at the back of him running Astrolinux. So it is doable, but that, of course, is on a much larger governmental scale.
Jill, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no problem. And yeah, Chris, I fully agree with you. Definitely. But Debian is so people want the stability of Debian, and I've noticed the scientific community is huge in Debian, and where I could see this as a really good resource is Debian core. There's not as much support as far as customization. And so this is a little distro that I think could do a good job with customizing for, a certain task, whether it be scientific, mathematical, or whatnot.
Sure. And as far as the
Yeah.
scientific community and stuff, I mean, I like I said, I don't know anybody directly for those. I'm just more of regular business, real estate, legal, those types of things. And like whenever I'm setting up a Linux-based server, and if I want something just absolutely rock solid, never's going to go anywhere, the first thing that pops in my head is RHEL. I mean, I would choose RHEL over Debian any day when it comes to stability, reliability, and security. A RHEL kernel is completely different from a Debian-based kernel. RHEL is way, way more secure and also more reliable and stable from a sysadmin point of view.
Chris, what about CentOS as a replacement for RHEL on the smaller business front?
Yeah,
CentOS and RHEL is like a carbon copy to me, honestly. I mean, they're so darn identical. So what CentOS to me is just someone's cheap that doesn't want to pay the support fees of Red Hat, so they just use CentOS. So I've actually done more CentOS installs than I have RHEL because of the licensing. And CentOS I think runs about 6 months to a year usually behind RHEL, but both, I mean, very, very identical and very stable, very secure. And that's why I'm like, that's always like, when it comes to business, that's like my first thing. The thing I hate about CentOS and Red Hat, just to be my own devil's advocate here, is the setup is just not as easy as a Debian-based system. Like I would choose Debian or Ubuntu server if I just wanted to set something up super quick. And I don't care if it's there for a year or two. But if it's something that's going to be there for 5-10 years, it's usually going to be, CentOS or RHEL-based system.
Yeah. Rocco, sorry. Aris has had his hand up for quite a while. Aris, what have you got to bring into it?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I don't know. I think we need kind of more information. Like, I don't know how many people this company would be using the Q4OS. That probably plays into it. And I think that hasn't been, brought up that much is pricing. I don't know, depending on how many users they have, maybe there's a better advantage using Q4OS. Maybe they get a better deal. Price is always a consideration. I will say one thing that I did love about Q4OS is like one of the few distros that when you start up the OS, it asks you to connect to Wi-Fi. Like I don't think any distro does that, and it really should. Like if you have a laptop, it should say, hey, do you want to connect to the Wi-Fi right now before you do anything.
One thing I might point out too, when it comes to Q4OS and cost and pricing, whenever you have someone that's converting from like a Windows-based environment, cost of Linux is like nothing in comparison. Like I think of my licensing costs, like standing up, whether it be a server or just a regular business with 10 10 or 20 people, you're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. And, you know, you're kind of splitting hairs when it comes to like Ubuntu, RHEL, or Q4OS. When it comes to their support models, it is like pennies compared to the competition. So that's, I don't think the cost is really would be the strongest selling point. A lot of it would be just, I think, more to Zeb's point, him saying it'd be a more personalized experience, possibly. That I think that's a angle to take that is viable.
Big Pot.
I think here, as many have said, that here we don't have all the data we need. We cannot do the equation without all the variables, because there is many things we don't know about this company, so we cannot really give a proper answer on what this distro is for them or not, because we don't have all the variables.
Well, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to reach out to them via email this week and see if I can get some more details. And like I said, I didn't give any details about the email because I don't know if that's what they want. So I'm not going to take it upon myself to release those details, but I'll try to reach out to them and see, you know, hey, give us some more details of how many people you have, how many computers you have, what kind of IT do you have, and we'll go from there. But yeah, anybody else want to get in on the Q4OS?
Maybe I can say some word.
Sure. Can I? I'm sorry, but I am surely not going to try to pronounce that name.
Don't try, Rocco. It's in Polish. It means
I'll try.
cyberpunk.
Let me try.
Cyfraka.
So you ruined it.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay. So anyway, go ahead. Welcome to Biddle.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Maybe if I didn't use 2 years ago Q4OS, I wasn't able to be here today, because I've tried to get into the Linux with Ubuntu, as most of the people, and my problem then, it was totally the hardware. I chose a really old laptop Dell to try and to get into Linux at all. And he has two main problems. It was Wi-Fi and video drivers. So maybe 2 years ago, I found Q4OS, and it was the first distro that was able to boot without problems and without any additional intervention, also to connect the proper video drivers and the Wi-Fi. So it was just working. And this even motivates me more. And I understand that maybe out there is other not so known distros that have also this kind of possibilities. And at the moment, because it's the laptop is, I'm not using it every day, but the laptop is still active. And after a little bit upgrade, now it's running Manjaro. It's the other distribution that is working without any problem.
Very nice.
It's short history, but in general, this Debian, which is the base, really helps in this two, which are big stoppers for most of the companies. And bear in mind that the laptop was designed to work with HP. I think that it was upgradable to 7 or Vista. So I think that if the period of this old Windows is already expired, sorry, it's a big possibility that people are trying, or this company is trying to use it on slightly older hardware.
Right. Yep. That is some excellent backstory on that. So let me ask you, in your opinion, would you tell this business to go with Q4OS?
It's too early without knowing a bit more information from them. What's their background? How many people have they got? What's their IT like? Have they already had a conversation with Q4OS? How did they feel about it?
Well, I mean, if they want to use Trinity, then bam, done. Yes, do it. Boom.
All right. Anybody else want to get in on Q4OS?
Yeah. One last comment on it. I was digging around after it. So you have that software installer thing that that Q4OS builds in before you really ever get access to anything else. And the way that you install that, I started digging around a little bit, and it looks like they're setting up repos, their own repos for just about everything. I installed Chrome and Firefox off the bat. It looks like Chrome is the official version, but Firefox is not. So you have to really trust Q4OS because they are setting up their own stuff rather than just pulling from a repository or something like that.
But isn't that
of
true
another
for
different.
most distros?
Yeah, I mean, like Linux Mint, yeah, sure enough, because they roll their own Firefox as well. But I mean, I use Linux Mint not as a company paying for service. So I think coming from that point of view, you have to take into account the security of your users, the security of the information that's flowing in and out of your company, and a lot of other things that are dealing that deal with that, especially since just about everything is web based now. So,
That's a good
like I
point.
said, the Chrome seems okay. The Firefox, I'm not positive about just yet. You'd have to dig a little further into that. But it's 73, which I think 75 is out right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah,
75 came out
Yeah,
recently.
that's pretty
yeah,
cool.
they're a little old on the Firefox, and I did run updates a couple different times to double check. So
Of
yeah,
course
I'm
they are.
not.
It's Debian.
Well, no, because Debian would give you the ESR version, right? Which is 70, early 70 something, right?
Which is super old.
Yeah, so I'm not even sure that it's that because it didn't
It's like
even
68 on ESR, I think.
yeah, it didn't identify itself as ESR. So that is definitely something that you want to pay attention to when you're deploying this. So as far as a recommendation, look into that first, and then it might be fine. It's living on Debian. I don't really hate it.
I don't really hate it.
Perfect. Just to say, on that point, Leo, I've actually got Firefox Snap installed, and it's 68.7 that I'm running. So if you wanted to, you could you can skip their particular version of Firefox, put the Snap in, and you'll be getting the official Snap version.
I think one of the big concerns there is that it's so easy, right? I mean, like it pops up at you at the very beginning. You click on it, it's like, oh, there's Firefox here, cool. Enter, and then call it a day.
If you're going to do it for a business, you should definitely just to compare the code, because if they are using Firefox, they more than likely have their code listed somewhere, so you could compare the binaries and see if they, are similar.
Yeah, get that hash and check it.
As Tony said right at the beginning, the end user is not going to be installing any of these packages. Hopefully, it's either going to be Q4OS coming in on a consultancy basis, or it's going to be their own IT department. So the end user, what I would doubt, will be touching any of that sort of stuff.
Right, and since I don't think anything like Ansible was mentioned, in the initial call for help on this one, I'm assuming it's a really small company, and there's going to be an IT guy bent over someone's shoulder, clicking next to get Firefox installed or something like that.
I'm very curious to see if we can find out more information about why they wanted to use Q4.
That'll help hone in.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Rocco.
Yeah.
So one of the things is looking at Q4S's website, the blurb about their support really doesn't say anything. It doesn't say if they have email support, phone support. It says they'll help you customize. They'll do whatever you want if you contact us. And to say that you would recommend a product without knowing what their real support levels is really next to impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Shout.
We don't know enough about Q4OS as a group as well. But that's that's something we.
I mean, look, coming to us asking for this type of advice is not really. I mean, please don't make a purchasing decision based off of our impression.
Eric Adams said, "Buy this product."
I'm putting a big asterisk here, and just we can tell you whether the desktop works and some of the features and attributes and stuff like that, but most of this decision needs to be made around deploying it, supporting it. Like the desktop itself is almost like the last consideration. Go with a company that you trust that's going to be able to give you all of the support that you need. Then worry. I mean, yes, of course they have their own, distro, but whatever you decide on, that to me is the most, like Chris was saying. I mean, that's the most important part. So,
if this company that we're talking about is a small company and they're considering this, I would recommend, say, finding a IT consultant to come in and help them decide this. It's not something that a bunch of us on a discussion can really do for them.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's Big Daddy Consultancy.
Right? Well, look, I think we've talked about Q4OS as much as we can for this show, because we're going to talk about it again for the next show. But anyway, that is what we have for Q4S for this show. We're going to still continue to test it out for the next week and see what we come up with. I definitely am going to try the Plasma version because I've only tried the Trinity version, but we'll go from there. But we will definitely talk about it on the 8 o'clock show. All right, moving on. We just got done with Ubuntu Testing Week, hashtag Ubuntu Testing Week, and we tested many ISOs, many dailies, many betas. So, Popey, can you what came out of all of this testing week? Is there something that we can take from this?
Yeah, you made more work for the desktop team, and that's without doubt. So, just to give you a background, there's people on the Ubuntu desktop team who, for many years, every day, they'll go and triage the bugs that are new. And often this is just putting canned responses in there because people don't provide enough detail. Sometimes it's marking things as duplicate or setting the priority or reassigning things to different packages or assigning them to people, right? It's just work that has to be done when people are filing bugs. And I heard via the grapevine from Martin that after the start of this testing week, which kicked off last week, the desktop team had more things to triage in their morning meeting than they had time for, and they had to schedule another meeting the next day to sit there and triage all these extra bugs. So it's not necessarily that there are more bugs in 2004. Don't read it as that. It's that there are more eyeballs on the beta than there have been in some of the more recent previous releases. And I think this is all down to the community, because it wasn't us that started this testing week. It was Yusuf Phillips in the community. He decided to rally the troops and get everyone testing this out. And if he hadn't done that and hadn't organized it and kept nagging people to get testing, there's no way we would have got as many people testing it as we did. It was fantastic.
Yep, it was. It was actually a lot of back and forth too in that Telegram group, talking about it, reporting bugs, talking about which bugs are going where, and it was excellent to see. There was a lot of buzz, a lot of feedback going on. So yeah. So what happens now? The beta is out. Does that beta get daily image updates or what?
So now that the freeze is finished, there'll be daily images built. And if anyone has installed 2004 now of any of the flavors, they'll continue to get package updates. They tend to slow down a little bit because the updates are now gated a little bit more. The people who push packages to the archive can't just push anything at any time like they can in the earlier part of the cycle. As we're getting closer to the release, there are more checks to make sure that there isn't a knock-on effect, ramifications from uploading a new package or updating a package that doesn't break something else, because we haven't got a lot of time left to unbreak stuff before the release on 23rd. And when you think the release is on the 23rd, the images are prepped the week before, really. So we really only have a week or so until the final images, the release candidates, start being built. But they'll probably respin those ISOs multiple times over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, you can either keep testing the dailies, or you could just install once and then just keep updating. Both are useful.
So it is useful, even though like the Ubuntu testing week is over and you know you're slowing down on this stuff. It is still useful to keep testing it.
Yep. Never stop testing.
Okay.
Hey,
Throwing
Rocco.
it out there. Hint. Yeah.
Hey, Rocco. I have some exciting news that also happens to be somewhat related. Did you know that there's a new season of the Ubuntu podcast?
There is a new season of Ubuntu podcast. What is it? Episode 2 already?
Oh,
is
stop.
Yeah.
I edited
so excited.
3 actually today. No, yesterday. We were quite lucky last year. The lovely people over at Jupiter Broadcasting did the production for us. No money changed hands. We just mentioned them once in a while. But unfortunately, things have changed over there. And we no longer have anyone who can do the audio production on the show. So we've gone back to doing it reluctantly ourselves until we find someone else who can do it, or we figure out a better way of doing that audio production. So yeah, I had to dust off my copy of Audacity yesterday. But yeah, new episode should come out. Should come out yesterday, but probably later today.
But it'll come out when you get it out.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you bring up Audacity. Me and Eric were talking earlier about looking at setting up some audio stuff and live streaming it and seeing what comes of it. I definitely want to learn Reaper. That's something that I want to take advantage of. And everybody that I know that does professional audio looks at Reaper as like one of the top programs out there. So I definitely want to set that up and learn about it.
Yeah.
Because I use Audacity. And I guess for my limited knowledge, it has been fine for me. I just don't always have the best sounding audio, but it's been fine. But that's more user error than it has been Audacity's, ability to do things.
I promise I won't go off on a wild tangent, but Audacity's great, but it's destructive, meaning that you apply an effect and you've now changed the audio, right? It's not just laying on top of it. And that's really the biggest difference between something like Audacity and Reaper is Reaper, when you add a filter, it doesn't actually do anything to the underlying audio. It's just change the output of that audio.
Did someone say non-destructive editing?
Yeah, exactly. Right? So that's really the biggest advantage for me whenever I switched from, so I still use Audacity. It's very good at certain things. Some of the filters in there, noise reduction, some of that stuff is really good. But for, just tweaking the audio, doing that in Reaper, you can do it real time, change the effects. Whereas in Audacity, if you've got an hour or two long piece of audio, you have to apply the effects. It takes some amount of time. If it wasn't right, and you have to undo it, redo it. It's very slow. Whereas with Reaper, or any DAW, it's all real time.
So what do you guys use for your audio, whether it be your videos or whether your podcast? Leo, what do you use for Mintcast?
Tony and I both use Audacity a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And is that okay? So do you find that it has enough to do? Like it has enough features in it. It has enough to do what you want it to make it sound the way you want.
Yeah, as far as just vocals go, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll use the limiter, the compressor, the equalizer, the normalizer, and I mean that right there is enough. And then truncate silence at the end of all of that. Those are the features that we need to make mostly pretty clean show. So if I were going to go out and buy something, I mean, Reaper would definitely be something that would be on my radar. $60 for, not you just can't make like $1 gajillion a year or something like that.
So we used to edit with Audacity, and we've got a kind of laminated sheet of instructions that are how we edit the show and how we use the same tools you do for EQ normalization and so on. And sometimes we have to tweak them when Audacity gets updated and a plugin is changed in some way, and that's fine. And we would do this, and I would get emails from one listener who tells us our audio is terrible all the time. And he would just keep on emailing in and say, hey, dude, you should have done this, or that was terrible, or you should stop using Audacity. It's not good enough. And so there are some people who are really picky about the audio. And thankfully, that person then started doing the production of our show. So that made that email problem go away because we just got him to do the edit.
Hey, wait, I know that guy.
You've given it away.
Because we got the same exact emails. We got the same emails.
Everyone does. Yeah, totally.
So I was getting Telegram direct messages from that one person. So yeah.
But it's lovely because he wants it to be better. The whole reason, the argument I had with him was, well, people are still listening. And he said, yeah, but you don't know how many people have stopped listening. And you can't measure how many people download your podcast, listen to the first 5 minutes, if that, say the audio is terrible, and then just unsubscribe. You will never know because those people won't email you. They'll never tell you. So you just don't know. And so it's We do take the audio side a little bit more seriously, but I would rather someone else did it, to be honest.
The most controversial part has got to be the theme song. I mean, come on.
No, but I think I like for
sure.
me, I take the audio very seriously. I don't always have the talent to make it sound the way I want to sound, or the knowledge, but I definitely take audio seriously. So who else here? Chris, what do you use for audio for your videos? Do you use an outside program or you just use the video editor?
I don't even usually do anything with my audio, so it just depends on what's going on. Obviously, if like an outside shoot, you got all that background noise, and I'll use Audacity and just do like a noise reduction and then maybe a little compression to just up that audio quality. But here in the actual studio, I just have everything. I have so many filters, and most of everything's done with hardware. So by the time I go to actually record, it should be a pretty crisp, clear sounding audio. But during the summer months, my audio kind of turns to trash because I have a AC unit, and here in Texas, it's like 110 in here, and I have to turn that AC unit on to even during recording. I can't even turn it off for 5 minutes. So I do have issues during the summer months where there'll be a little bit more background sound, but for the most part, it's usually a pretty good experience. But it's so difficult. I probably struggle the most with the levels, just so you don't have any peaking. I hate peaking, and just it's a constant battle for me. But I don't do any
bunch of
post-production.
Texans here today.
Well, I think audio is very important to get it right. Who was it? Larry Bushy on Linux Spotlight said, you can forgive a video for not being, quite perfect in quality, but you can't really forgive audio. And recently I just noticed, so I recorded a few Linux Spotlights already, and I noticed in 3 back now that I have a little not static, but some kind of noise in the microphone itself, and it's driving me insane. And I think I figured out what it is, but I can't fix the recordings that I already did. So I believe it was a Bluetooth speaker bar that I had connected with an analog cable to the tower to be as another output source, and that was causing the little bit of noise in my microphone. And I can take the noise out of, the parts where I'm not talking, but I can definitely hear it when I am talking. There's a background noise. So what are you gonna do?
Linux, Rocco, something I want to work on with you. I mean, I want to work with all this stuff with you, but I've recently started looking at browser audio. So there's things like Clean Feed, where it's basically meant to be low latency, kind of point-to-point audio. We rely a lot on Zoom, and I would say for Linux Spotlight in particular, some of the problems you've had is it's mostly the guest audio, right? And so if there were a way to get better audio out of your guest, then
that's the thing. There are certain guests that I can approach and I can say, hey, can you record the audio on your end so that I can have a clean copy of it? And most of them are more than happy to do that. Other guests, I'm not going to ask to record the audio. So, I get an interview with Mark Shuttleworth. I'm not going to say, hey, Mark, hey, you want to record your audio? So,
well, the Clean Feed doesn't do that. It still does the audio on their end. It's just they have better audio output.
No, you can capture it on your side, Michael. That would be the point, is that you can either. I'm not trying to jump on you. I'm just saying, the point would be that you could either. The point would be that either you could record it in that program itself, so Clean Feed offers an option to do that, or others like it, or you could actually just capture it on your side and have it as part of your mix. You could even record it as a separate track, and then that way you have multiple tracks. There's lots of things I think I could do to help Rocco. We'll get there.
So what he's really saying is my audio is terrible, and you need my help.
Your audio, no, that's the thing. Your audio is good.
He didn't say it at all. He just implied it.
Right? No,
the variable, and I know Jill and anyone else who's dealing with lots of other people on streams and stuff like that, it can be tough because Jill has Ven. So, I mean, that's a little unfair. But
right, the guru of audio.
Yeah,
in stone.
But that's the wild card is what is the guest audio going to sound like?
Well, Linux Spotlight is a little bit easier than this show. So I try to clean up this audio and put it out as a podcast. But there are so many things going on, and there's only one track for everybody's audio. So it's like if somebody's typing or some, whatever, making noise, their mic's not on mute or whatever, it is extremely difficult to get it out. And people are different levels. Connor, you guys at Linux Lads, what do you? I know you were editing some of the shows. Shane was editing some of the shows. So what do you use?
Well, Shane is the go-to editor, so he's definitely more of the whiz kid than us, or than me, myself personally. I edited one of the episodes, and as far as I'm aware, Shane uses Audacity to do the editing. We record in Audacity. There's one called Ocean Audio, OCEN Audio. That's a proprietary piece of software. I had that installed, so I did my recording in that for some of the shows. And then I just switched back to Audacity. There's not much difference in terms of the interface between the two. It was just a minor preference, and then I just realized why not just use something open source, because Audacity pretty much does the exact same thing. So that's what we're using to record, is we use Audacity. So Shane volunteered because at the very beginning, because he decided, listen, this is a project that I'm interested in. I want to get better at it. So he used the podcast as his learning opportunity as well. So as we got more used to podcast etiquette, and being the whole podcast production side of things, Shane got more used to the audio editing. So it's a journey. Like pretty much anyone who's a podcaster, going back to the early episodes, I cringe. So
yeah, I think probably the biggest thing I learned was separating out all the channels. Like you have, like if I was running like a Zoom or something like that, I would have that as a separate source. I would have my audio as a separate source, and then just getting those levels to be equal, because there's nothing more aggravating than that. And then probably the second probably biggest tip I'd have for someone doing it is don't use any analog. Like when you're coming into your computer that's, ingesting all this stuff, don't come through like a 3.55 millimeter. That's just like the biggest mistake. Putting it into like a USB DAC and then pulling that in digital is what you want to do. And then once you get it really, really good, you can clean up all that audio before it even hits the recording, and it'll just make it to where you can just jam out videos. Like if I really set my mind to it, I could probably do 2 to 3 videos every single day, which is just insane.
Chris, what do you?
You're right, that is insane.
You were mentioning
like a machine.
You were mentioning earlier about having hardware for filters and limiters and stuff like that. What do you have that you use?
So I really like the Soundcraft stuff. It's a little more pricey, but you got a Shure SM7B right there. I mean, I know you probably got a cloud lifter on that feeding into another mixer. And what I have is just, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge change scenario, because it just was too cheap on the USB DAC. But what I ended up doing was the Shure SM7B to the cloud lifter into a Soundcraft UI16, which is a universal. You can be on your iPad, you could be on a Linux box. It doesn't matter. There's no software to install. You just pull up the website, and then you can edit all your levels. So everything is absolutely out, and everything has its own EQ. Everything has its own noise gate. And then you just set everything how it should be. And then it automatically adjusts the voice to how it should sound. So it sounds natural and good. And then after that, I kick it out, and it only kicks out in analog. So I usually kick that into another, where it would go into like the USB DAC, but I've just been too cheap to buy one. So I just ended up just using my, I think it was a Yamaha. No, it's a Behringer, not even a very good USB mixer, but it has a digital out. So I just put it into that, and then I have that spider webbed out, so I can record my audio here and about 3 other places all at the same time. So this actually splinters out into 4 different channels, and it actually goes out to like a gaming box. So if I'm gaming, I can be chatting and also recording at the same time, and just yeah, it's a ridiculous setup, but it definitely helps when ingesting, because when you're trying to do the edits, you guys know that's just a nightmare when you're editing the audio and trying to get all the hiss and buzzes out, and it's just no fun.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Right. Starting with a good audio is like the most important thing you can do.
Yeah.
Jill, I know Ven does a lot of the editing there and all of the sound, but you have to know about it. So what is your take on it?
Yeah. So, I always do all my testing in Audacity, and sometimes Ardor as well. In fact, that's what Ven uses live. He's using Ardor to do our noise gating digitally and whatnot. But I also use DaVinci too, and
Well, I know Ven doesn't
yeah.
like DaVinci Resolve for audio anyway. I know
Yeah,
he'd much
for
rather use
audio.
something
Yeah.
else, but
Yeah.
I find DaVinci Resolve fine for editing audio and like some of the features it has. But again, I'm not as advanced as he is. He's like
what's also
super
a good
genius.
audio. It's a good video editor that has good audio, but it's not a good audio editor.
Exactly. They have made some major improvements in this last version, but it is getting there, but it's not there yet. But yeah, so personally, like when I'm going on Jupiter Broadcasting, I'm doing it all on my own hardware. I've got a Behringer preamp to a Behringer limiter compressor that I call the Giggletron 9000. I know.
That's the new branding of it. There's no other name it could possibly be.
That's what Ven called it, my Giggletron, and that was before before we were doing everything digitally, a couple years ago. But when I'm going on other podcasts and recording locally, that's what I like to do, so I don't accidentally, and don't overmodulate.
Right.
So, but for Ven in real time, I'm just doing it through this is an Aston Stealth mic. It's got its own preamp, which is going to a Behringer mixer into the computer.
Right.
And so Ven on his end, is doing everything live.
Well, I mean, I think the setup that I have is fine. I think the only thing that I'm missing would be to have some type of hardware to do what, like you said and what Chris said, is to do some of the EQ and some of the compression hardware related before it even gets to the track.
Michael, what was the thing that Noah and Ryan they're using? Rocco, it's like a couple $100, but it does all of the
DBX 286.
Yeah, look up DBX 286 because that handles all of their
noise gate and stuff like that.
Yeah, it has a noise gate. It has de-esser, and it also has compressor on it.
But that's only going to be for your audio. You're still going to have to treat your guest's audio.
Right.
So.
All right. You guys got something you want to talk about? We got plenty of time. Throwing it out to the crowd.
I've actually I actually had something there, and it's kind of a surprising one for me, but something I've been working on. Clear Linux. I think I made a video a while back, and I actually went back and deleted it. It was called "Clear Linux is the Devil," and it was a horrible video. And I went back and actually erased it, and then I made another one recently about Clear Linux. And I was on my laptop, and I was using Arch because most people that follow me know that I'm a big Arch guy just because of the granularity of it all. But I ended up deleting my Arch from my laptop because Arch is something you just kind of have to stay on top of. If you go months without,
you're saying Arch is the devil.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are following me.
That seems to be a little bit of a theme there. I remember another title like that.
Yeah. Let's not mention it. I see Alan over there. I don't want to stir up a hornet's nest on that one. But Clear Linux, I would say it was really surprising to me how functional it was. And I wanted something that I could just turn off for months at a time and come back to and have the updates and how it managed the packages. And then I was really kind of admiring it as I go deeper into Clear Linux, how different it is from a lot of different distributions out there. So I've actually been tinkering more with that on my actual laptop, and really a very interesting spin of any Linux that I've done, because everything is completely different from what I was used to, like most things residing in ETC and all these other things. It's very interesting distribution, which I did not anticipate myself doing like a full 180 from basically calling it, no, I didn't basically, I did call it the devil. And then going to the point where I'm like, I might just full-time this on my laptop, which, it
Wow.
actually ended up going that direction.
Yes. Well,
doesn't Clear Linux have the problem of not using mitigations for all the massive vulnerabilities like Meltdown and Spectre and stuff?
I believe it actually does use all those mitigations. I think that was kind of a myth.
They're
basically.
off. They're off by default. Every single one of them. That's how they win all of the speed demons.
Really?
Actually, it's just
Yeah.
partial.
It's a partial.
Disablement. Some of them
Yeah.
are enabled, some of them disabled, but the biggest one, that lose the biggest amount of performance are disabled.
That makes
But I
sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I could see that because
Well, they want benchmarks. They got to get the
Yeah.
benchmarks. So of
It's
course they can't
benchmarks.
have security because that wouldn't work for them.
So has anybody actually
guys.
disabled all those? Because I actually made a video about disabling all the Spectre and Meltdown patches just to see the performance boost. And it is a pretty substantial performance boost. If you remove every single mitigation, it's about a 30% boost on, I think it was 5th and 6th gen i5s and i7s that you saw the massive amounts of performance increase. So I could see that on that specific one, but I didn't really choose it mainly for the actual mitigations. But that is a good fact. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I think that the Clear Linux does that for the whole benchmark, which is actually kind of hilarious considering AMD there's reports that says AMD runs better on Clear Linux than Intel does.
Yeah, all my stuff's AMD here, so that's one of the things that, and honestly, I think when it comes to AMD chips, you don't really see much of the mitigation. I think the most, from disabling mitigation, I might have picked up between 5 and 10% on an AMD chip, but I know the Intel was hit just
I saw
devastatingly
nothing on my
hard.
Threadripper when I turn them off. So
Yeah. That's mainly because most
Yeah,
of the mitigation
rub it in,
hit
Zeb.
sorry.
Intel.
There's the
seen it in my
Michael
Threadripper.
soundbite of Threadripper.
Yeah, we tried Clear Linux in the Distro Challenge back in February, I think it was, and it wasn't a big hit. Like it was one of the more sour type of Distro challenges. Not many people wanted to try it, and one of the people that did want to try it, weren't real impressed with it. So
yeah, like its syntax, like the swap d bundle dash add and all that. I mean, I could totally immediately. I was immediately going to my bash RC file. I was like alias, apt,
right,
switching it over to where I could just install packages real quick. But yeah, no, it's surprising. I would not use it on my main box here, but for my laptop, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna full time this. Just to go into it, what's the worst challenge you guys have ever done here? I think that'd be a good question. I'd love to hear what you guys hated the most.
But I guess that would be really subjective for each person.
So subjective.
Like, we don't have we don't have a rating system.
We know which one. The one
I'll
that
tell you what
went
it would be.
worst.
I'll tell you what it would be, Rocco.
Chrome, wasn't it?
Which one of the two did we try with Thomas's random picker?
One of them was Clear Linux, I think. No,
Yeah.
but Popey, you're right. I
Yeah.
think Chrome OS. I think that was terrible.
Didn't work.
But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is we don't have a rating system at the end to say this is what we would rate this. We just give our personal opinions on it. So we wouldn't be able to go back and say this was the worst one. It would just be more of our recollection. And I think Chrome,
I mean,
Chrome
yeah,
OS
you
would
could
be,
go back. You just need to go back and make retroactively start ranking all of them for every person who showed up, and then you make it less. It only take you like 2 months.
Michael, why don't you get on that?
Oh, I said you could go back.
But yeah, I think Chrome OS would be up at the top of the list for one of the worst ones we've ever tried.
So you're saying Chrome OS is the devil?
I don't know. Chris might say that, but
it is the devil. It's worse than Ubuntu. that's my review of Chrome OS.
Wow.
I mean, you
Chris,
could argue it is because of Google.
Yeah.
So.
Chris, what I wanted to say is I'm running a Clear OS on a laptop too, and I love it as well. It's runs really smooth. It runs games really well on even a very old laptop. But we all joked about it, Linux Gamecast, because we call it Flatpak the OS.
It is totally Flatpak OS.
Yeah.
You just have like their software center up and like just type in your package you're looking for, because there's no
Yeah.
way it's going to match anything. And then you just like, oh, okay, so that's what you need to bundle add. And then you try that and you're like, okay, that worked. Or okay, time to go to Flatpak. You're absolutely right there.
Yep.
Yeah, we've had a couple of other volunteers. We've had Cubes OS and Rosa OS, if you remember back that far.
Oh God, yeah.
That fell flat on its.
I could see Cubes just stinking so bad, because like I'm pretty technical, and I got on Cubes and I was just like, this is a freaking nightmare. And I set up mini networks and everything, and just like managing it all, I was just like, you'd have to be like living in a base bunker somewhere and be wearing tinfoil suit to be able to use this. And I mean, the amount of time you'd have to dedicate to make Cubes functional is just ridiculous.
I completely disagree. Cubes is awesome, but it matters only about your hardware. If you have beastly hardware, Cubes is fine. If you have an average or a mid-tier laptop or something, Cubes will be a nightmare. It depends on what you put it on, because it's like so much virtualization. But you can have like the best thing about Cubes is that you can have temporary virtual machines that can be destroyed as soon as you're done doing something. So you have so much control and so much privacy. It's the ultimate privacy-based distribution, unless you're going for something like Tails where it doesn't remember anything. So like, it's a
like,
fantastic distro.
I would say the usability of Cubes OS is like 0.001% of the market, because like the technical skill required to navigate it and for your average user to be able to use Cubes OS is like almost like a 0% chance.
It's not an average user thing. I mean, most Linux distros are not average user things. So I think that there's, I think that there's definitely a value to it for people who want privacy to a nth degree type.
No doubt. I mean, there's definitely a value to it, Michael. There's no question that there's a value to it, but the question is, and yes, you could say even to regular users, it's probably 0%, but even to regular Linux users, there's a big learning curve too. So it's not just like installing a regular Linux. So it's got a great value to it, but it's definitely got some usability issues.
Yeah, but I would say the same thing about anything that's, Arch related, where it's very complicated for average users to get used to, and things like Gentoo.
Not at all. You install Manjaro. You install.
No, Manjaro is not Arch. I'm not saying Manjaro.
Oh, here we go with the old snobbery Arch rubbish.
Oh, this is not a snobbery thing, Zeb. In fact, I distro hopped, by the way. For people who are
Arch is the easiest distribution in the world to me. Once you get past the install.
Once you get past the part where it's not easy, it's now easy. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but no.
But you're coming from it, Chris. You're coming from it from a geek standpoint. Like, you've been using it for so long that everything is second nature, and that's not that way for everybody.
Well, that's also a thing that people say all the time. It's like, this is so easy. Once you know, it doesn't matter if it's easy anymore.
Let's take a noob that knows nothing about any distribution. I would have way easier time training them on how to use Arch than I would any other distribution, because just the AUR in general, I mean, that is super powerful. You got to acknowledge how easy that is for so many users.
Yeah, but
just to be able to be like, boom.
I'm gonna have to completely disagree on that one too.
It's a mind. It's just the AUR is great if you know what you're doing. But if you're somebody who just comes along and I want this program, and chuck it in, and you don't check those text files, what have you just installed? You've got no idea.
Well, I think the biggest thing with Arch is not the fact that the AUR is not great. The AUR is great. You can definitely learn Arch, and that's also great. But the problem is maintaining it. So yes, you can install it, but you also have to have the knowledge to maintain it. Otherwise, it isn't worth installing.
That's fair.
And if you're not fluent in geekism, good luck with a wiki.
Yeah, and also like the issues of like the way the syntax, where the syntax is just as esoteric as the rest of it. Like I want to install something, capital S. That makes sense. Like there's so many pieces of Arch that are not user friendly in any way whatsoever, but they don't want it to be, and they specifically say it's for intermediate users, and they don't care if a beginner can use it and that thing. So what I said is that when I said Arch is not that way, something based on Arch can be that way. Like Zeb said, is Manjaro, and it's not the idea of like the snobbery thing is like this is not Arch. It is an Arch-based system, and you could even argue it's compatible with Arch. And I'm not saying there's anything big wrong with that part. I'm saying that when someone says that Arch is difficult, they are 100% not referring to Manjaro, because Manjaro is very easy. Like, so I mentioned that I distro hopped, and Rocco asked where I switched to. Manjaro would be the answer. So that's the thing about that is Manjaro is actually a long time ago I didn't like Manjaro, and giving it a shot this past couple weeks, I'm a fan.
So, like,
I think
to me, when you talk about like Manjaro and Arch, it's one and the same to me. I mean, you're talking about almost the same thing. It's just the setup's different. I mean, at its core,
the
though,
usage is
it's
different.
almost
It's very
identical.
different. No, there's a GUI installer, not a GUI installer. I haven't even touched the command line whatsoever in Manjaro for the purpose of seeing if I can, and I can, and it's impressive to the level of like how much they have simplified Arch. I don't think that they are at a position where I would say it's comfortable to suggest anybody use it, but I would definitely say that there are so many things different between Manjaro and Arch that they're not even in the same ballpark.
The major difference.
Hang on, guys.
Sorry.
Alan, you're way too polite. You were trying to say something there, mate. Jump in.
I think the big mistake people who are technical make is for some reason they forget their history. Nobody came out of the womb knowing how to use Pac-Man, and the vast majority of the people don't want to. They just want to sit down at a computer and type a document or use a website or do their finances or whatever. They don't want to be a sysadmin, and running Arch makes you into a sysadmin. Having to go and read a blog before you update your system makes you a sysadmin. And the vast majority of people are not like that. Yes, there's a whole bunch of nerds in this room who are all perfectly capable of running Arch, whether they choose to or not. But the vast majority of people do not want that. They don't want this nerdism. They want to click on a button, open an application, do the stuff, shut the lid, walk away. And I think it's somewhat blinkered to think that Arch is appropriate for that level of user, because it just isn't.
I think once you get it set up the right way, it is that to me. Like when I walk into the studio here, everything's set up. I have the streaming, I have the regular desktop.
Past 99% of the hurdles
set up. It's good. I'm a nerd. I am a nerd. I'll give you that. I can see that. But at the same time, I think once you get it all set up, man, it just there's nothing better than.
But you keep adding a qualifier that is an incredibly important qualifier. Once you have it set up,
it's just
all right. So let's get to.
Hang on.
Hang on a minute. You keep forgetting that you've just admitted you had 30 years experience in IT. The average user
20
doesn't.
Okay, so hold on, stand by.
Hang on, can I just
Alan, go ahead.
I had a Manjaro install, and I updated it and put it in a drawer and didn't use it for a little while. I took it out this week and opened the lid, turned it on, and it works perfectly fine. I tried to update it and it fell over in various different ways. And I used executive privilege and spoke to Philip from Manjaro and said, hey, dude, this thing's busted in 1,000 colors. Help me fix it. And he had trouble helping me fix this thing. Now, if the guy who makes the distro had difficulty helping me fix a laptop that runs his distro, what the hell help has a normal user got?
Yep. Agreed.
I think that's a fair criticism. I'm going to let you have that, because I had the exact same thing happen on my laptop, and that's why it's unclear living.
All right, let's get to
no,
some of these
use
other
it every
people.
week. That's what I got to say.
Big Pod, go ahead.
I wanted to say that while yes, I am on Linux for about 2 years, something like that, maybe a bit more. I'm perfectly at home in Arch. I set it up once to be what I like, and then I just transfer the configs, and I basically don't touch anything besides updates, except if I want to specifically change something in my system.
All right.
But that's how I did it, and that's how I did it. But I have a question for Michael. He said Manjaro isn't Arch. So is Ubuntu Debian? Some people say it is, some people don't.
It depends on your perspective context. You could say that yes, it is, and also you could say no, it's not. Same thing with Manjaro. Yes, it is compatible with a lot of Arch stuff. Yes, it has AUR compatibility for the most part, and yeah, you could say all that stuff. But it's when someone says I'm running Arch, they don't mean Manjaro. Or when I'm running Debian, they don't mean Ubuntu. So in one direction, yes. The other direction, no.
The biggest difference to me between Manjaro and Arch, so you have things like you had Antergos, you have Endeavor, Reborn. There's lots of Arch-based installers, for lack of a better way to say it, where they add some theming, they add some tool sets, just, stuff like that. But it's all sitting on top of just raw Arch, right? It's their upstream, their repos are just the Arch repos. Manjaro has their own repos, and that's what makes it different. So they have unstable, which is just upstream Arch. They've got testing, which is what they're currently testing, and then they have stable. And that's the biggest difference to me running Manjaro, is that I'm using their repositories and their package release cycle, which makes it somewhat semi-rolling, because yes, it's still Arch, and yes, it's pretty close to being up to date, but they are packaging and releasing things, pushing them out into stable. You're not just getting the full flow from Arch. That's really fundamentally the biggest difference between Manjaro and Arch.
I agree.
Manjaro is so well done, and it protects you from the lunacy that is Arch. It really does.
It does.
I agree.
People might complain, and so one of the complaints you might get is someone who uses Arch says, "Well, the new version of Plasma's out, and I don't have it yet." Well, that's because it's in testing. Because they're going to get it to you when they've had a chance to actually do some testing on it.
Right, and I would even say that there is some level of where people make some. I know a lot of Arch people who make a joke that is common in saying that, when someone says, "Hey, are you an Arch user?" And you mentioned something about Arch, and they're like, "No, I'm a Manjaro beta tester," and like that is somewhat accurate. But I think that there's a lot of value in what you're saying is accurate, that Manjaro is very different because it does a repo, does an extra testing section. And also the whole Plasma is a good example, because with the latest version of Plasma, there were some issues that Manjaro didn't want to push it out quickly. And then I remember when I was using Arch, and it was like Plasma 5.2-ish, which was 100% broken and should not have been pushed to stable anything ever. And Arch was like, let's push it. And it broke everything. And it broke it to the point where it removed console from the system. Like it just deleted it for some, like sometimes there's problems. And when you have the biggest difference is that wouldn't happen for Manjaro, because they wouldn't have pushed it. They would have seen a problem and go, oh no.
Well, that was your problem when it comes to you just were using Arch wrong. I mean, obviously you don't use a desktop environment with Arch. You use a window manager.
Sure,
and you do
I should have had
everything
i3
on the back end.
That's a good point.
You just got to set it up right. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Chicken, you wanted to get into this.
Oh goodness, yeah, here I go. So I recently had a bout with Arch, a gout, whichever way you want to look at it. And it's cool, right? Like I get why people like it, but I've come up with kind of like a theory as to why people seem to think that it's something you can recommend to quote unquote normal people, or why it may it's easy, like just follow the wiki. Even though realistically that's not how that works. You're always going to find someone who runs into something that doesn't work exactly like the generic instructions on a wiki work, because it's an install guide. It's not like an oracle that can just, I know what's wrong with your hardware. This is exactly how to fix it. It doesn't do that kind of auto detection for you. It has some niceties in it that try and auto detect and fix things. Doesn't solve it for everything, and a lot of the type of hardware issues that people will run into that quote unquote just work on other distros, because they're kind of made to work like for the user out of the box without the user having to set it up. So what I've learned from this basically is just that once you get to the point where you're comfortable with it and you're doing it, you lose the perspective of someone who is not there at that point. You know, they're coming from a place where they can click the buttons and the system knows what it needs to do and it does it, and they can walk through it. They don't have to read a book just to get their OS running. So I feel like it's just a huge sort of disconnect in perspective rather than it actually being easy.
I still have a hard time recommending Manjaro as a beginner distro, but Ryan recently gave me a good reason for that. If you are using newer hardware and need the latest kernels and latest hardware support, then something like Manjaro works really, really well for that.
It also depends on your objective. Like, why are you installing Linux? Is this on a secondary computer and you want to learn about this new thing, maybe to teach yourself a new skill? Is it just tinkering? Is it a hobby? Is it something you're just playing with? Or is it your primary machine that you want to use on a daily basis to develop applications or graphic design or whatever it is you might do? And I think thinking carefully about what the use case is and how you're going to use it will determine which one's most appropriate. And yeah, if it's a hobby and something you're tinkering with, Arch is great because you get to learn all about where these esoteric files are and these strange commands. That's fine, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, though, I think when it comes to Linux, I think a lot of people, what makes it so powerful is there's something for everyone, no matter who you are, what kind of person you are. There's something that's just fantastic. Like, obviously, that's the one thing I take away from this conversation. I honestly think Arch is fantastic. I use it on my Streambox. I use it here. I use it inside. I use it everywhere except on my laptop because it broke. But the thing I love most about it is Linux.
I heard Arch never breaks.
not when you use it right. I just took a couple months to use.
He put a
laptop.
DE on it and it messed up.
But that's just so fantastic about all this. You know, when it comes down to it, no matter what it is, the cool thing about Linux is there's something for any user out there. When it's my mother-in-law, I think I installed Pop OS for her because it was just probably the easiest one for her, and it ended up being perfect. And then, you know, it just depends on who the user is.
Why did you not install Arch?
Because it was my mother-in-law.
I agree with Alan. What do you mean? Because I thought it was easy though.
I took away from our previous conversation that this was perfect for everyone in all use cases.
Well, I did not say it was perfect for everyone in all use cases. I said it was perfect once you get it all set up for me. But
we got
maybe there wasn't a for me in there, but
I don't think there was a for me.
But yeah. For me though, it is a really awesome thing. It has changed my life. It's much more stable. It's much more reliable. I'm able to do so much more than I ever would have coming from Windows, which is amazing. So to me, it just kind of changes my world and it makes me more efficient. But again, everything is different for each user out there. I think the one thing that's cool about y'all is you try everything and you get a little taste of it all. And there's something out there for everyone. And for me, Arch is the king. But I know it's not like that for everyone. And that's why, like, when I'm making videos and things like that, I'll leave Debian instructions, which carry down into Ubuntu and the hundreds of other distributions that they're based off of. But, you know, it's just a fantastic, you know, just Linux as a whole. There's nothing in it that I don't love. And, you know, that's the big takeaway there. And I do say it a little tongue in cheek, you know, usually, hey, by the way, I use Arch, but and Ubuntu is the devil and those types of things. But typically, you know, it's just all of it. It just depends on who you are and your use case of Linux in general. But, you know,
Connor, what did you want to get in on?
So I was just thinking about when I was listening to people. I mean, my perspective, I'm running Manjaro at the moment, and the way I run it is I'm running the 5.4 LTS kernel, and I'm getting the GUI notifier saying, "Hey, there's a new 5.6 is out, and do you know there's a newer kernel release out?" And I'm just like, "That's fine. I'll stick to the LTS for the moment. I may some weekend when I'm feeling adventurous may do an upgrade."
Do it.
For the moment, I'm fine. And I like the flexibility of it. I like the fact that it is rolling. I like the fact that I am admittedly on an LTS kernel, but that's my own decision. But I am getting the relative latest updates, packages. To Michael's point, you can do everything in the GUI, and it's perfect because as somebody who's been using Ubuntu in the past, where I've kind of been used to the GUI and then switching over, but also I can do the Pacman-S or Yay-S, as I'm using Yay at the moment, which I think is fantastic. It's one command and it does all your updates regardless of whether it's from the AU or not. And one shout out I actually want to give is a little nod to Zeb, because he put me in this direction, is I think you can do Pacman or no Pamac install and then your package. So if you're used to the syntax coming from your apt install from Ubuntu or Debian, you can do Pamac install and then whatever package you want to look for. So there is that kind of muscle memory if you're coming from other distros as well.
All right.
Which is actually a really cool feature, because that's a thing that Manjaro did for the Pamac GUI, is also the command line that is similar to the other thing. So they covered a lot of bases there.
We got some more time. Anybody else want to get on this? Jill, what do you think about running Arch?
I actually use Arch too.
Oh my gosh. By the way,
I mean, I don't have it on my broadcasting rig, but I have used it for rendering. Honestly, the AUR is really good if you want to try the latest and greatest, like with DaVinci and all the Blender, whatever you're using. It's really good for that because they have built-in scripts to do the updates, which is really nice.
Nice.
So a lot of times I'll do my testing on Arch for the latest graphics apps. But I use all the distros, so
yep.
I like them all.
Chicken, you got your hand up.
Okay, so I'm a little weird. All right, I'm behind the times. I recently decided that it would be a good idea to try and move away from things like Chrome and really, give like Firefox a shot, stop using Gmail as much. And I'm like scrolling through all my apps on my phone, looking at like what has access to location services. No, spoilers, it's everything. So
yes. And also spoilers, if you turn off some of the location stuff, you will break your phone.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Nice.
I had to reset my phone to get the stuff back.
I love breaking stuff. This will be great. So I was actually curious to you guys. Curious, you know what? I have a question for you. When it comes to moving towards like more open services and applications, what do you typically recommend like steps taken? Because there are so many things that I'm tied into. Like, I don't know where to start, where to finish. I don't know like what apps exist as alternatives to things like Discord, where there's like both an IRC or not what there's both an iOS client and a desktop client. Like, how does one go about this?
Depends on what you want to do. Like, if you want to have like the full suite of a calendar and everything that replaces the existing things, or you just want like alternatives. And if you want just alternatives, then the best website to find these is alternative2.net. You just put in whatever application you want to get an alternative for. They'll have a list of them, and there's also comments and reviews of people telling you whether or not it is a alternative in their opinion and whatnot and stuff.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things that you're going to have to come away from Google Chrome is how many people here know how many websites they signed up to just by clicking, "We need you to log in." Google, dink, done.
It's a lot.
How are you going to get away from all of those, but you still keep that? That's probably one of the hardest things when moving away from Google.
Getting away from Chrome is very easy because Firefox is amazing. Getting away from Google's Gmail I agree, that is a massive task to get away from. And I think the only way to do it is to not, clean cut and just abandon it or whatever, but to have access to the logins and all that stuff is to keep the accounts for Gmail up until you actually have gone through everything. And that may even take years, admittedly. So I don't think that and also there's even examples of where you can't really get of the Gmail account entirely if you want to have a YouTube account.
Right.
Michael, when it comes to Gmail, when you're switching off, what service are you using? Are you suggesting like host your own? Or are you doing like a Proton Mail switch? I mean, what do you do?
I would absolutely never suggest anyone host their own. I do host my own, but I don't suggest anyone do that because that is torture and awful. So I would say Proton Mail is a good option. Tutanota is also a good option. It really depends. What's that? Rackspace, doesn't that, Eric, isn't that a good one?
Yeah, I use Rackspace Mail for all of my customers. It's flawless. It just works. It never fails, and yeah, it's excellent. It's cheap.
Yes. So if you want a good email client, there's a good email service. There's a lot of those. I think Fastmail's okay. I think they raised their prices up. That's not as nice.
I have Fastmail. That's what I use for my default.
Yeah. Well, Fastmail is good too. I think there's a lot of them that are as good options as alternatives, but they all lack something big. Like some of them lack a calendar, or some of them lack the ability to like have sync between different devices and all that kind of stuff. So it really depends on what you want. I don't think that there's anything that is comparable that would allow you to have like a single one step to another step and have everything ready to go, because, well, and I guess there are alternatives, but they're all like the same kind of services that you have to sign up for and everything.
That's the biggest problem. Go ahead, Alan.
One thing I will say, and I'm probably Mike would find it remiss if I don't give it a mention, is I think I've not used it myself, but he swears by Colab Now, because it does mail, calendar, contacts, and a few other things.
Sorry,
Colab
what is it?
Colab Now.
Colab Now with a K. I think it was it affiliated with the KDE project? I don't know if it still is.
No.
It
should be just by the name, but no, it's not.
Okay.
But the Colab Now is a good point. I forgot about it completely. It's great for people who have a single email address, have the desire to use all these different like suites, because they have a ton of different applications you can sync together, and their smallest version I think is like $5 a month. But if you have, like for my example of me, which admittedly this is overkill to stupid degrees, about 40 or 50 email addresses. So they won't allow you to do that. So I couldn't try it out other than the main email I tried it with. But as far as like if you're a normal person, you have one email address, then you're good to go.
That's because you wanted one email address for each key on your blank keyboard. That's what that was.
Well, I mean
there actually is 48 keys, so it could be that.
You could do a proxy service on that, Michael. You could do like a mail gun and then just filter it all into one.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, you could do it where you just have the proxy for Mailjet or Mailgun, and then have it where it sends a specific like tag label to the address, maybe if they accept alias tags. I don't know.
Yeah, you can just basically ingest the whole thing. Like my whole christitus.com, it runs through there, and then I can just basically do whatever I want with it. So I can just do 100 email addresses and then filter it all into one on a service that I use to host my email.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yahoo Mail.
Do what?
But again,
I said you could
Chris,
always go to Yahoo Mail.
You are a geek, Chris. So and so is Michael. So there you go. Wendy in chat said about MailFence. Never tried them. Never had them. So I'm not sure about them.
I've heard of them as well. They look like they have a lot of potential. They're on the same level as I'd say like Proton and Fastmail kind of stuff.
Because I have limited experience with Proton Mail. I actually use them for like more sensitive stuff. I never really send anything like super critical over the web, because I feel like if there's probably an issue there at some point, but things that I just like prefer to keep a little more private just for the courtesy of others, I usually go through Proton Mail for that. But I've looked into Nextcloud a little bit. I guess they have like a calendar system as well, and
Nextcloud's really cool.
That.
There are some issues with Nextcloud, but for the most part, it's really good.
Are you telling me there's something that isn't perfect, Michael?
I think every conversation we have, I think I do that. Yeah.
Well, I had Proton Mail, and that was my main address for a while, probably a year. And I ended up switching away from it. And I know everybody will give me a hard time about it, but I ended up switching away from it because of the fact that it was a little too secure, maybe for me. Like there was too
What?
many hoops that you would have to do to get your mail. Continually logging in on the web client. If you wanted to use Thunderbird, you had to use a bridge, and that was in beta. And then you had to manually update the bridge constantly because they would come out with updates for it. Didn't auto update. There was just so many things that I spent more time keeping up with Proton than I did actually checking my emails. So I ended up switching to Fastmail. So I'm not recommending anybody do that. That's just my personal experience.
I think you'll find the Proton Mail bridges in the AUR and it auto updates.
I don't
gotta use Arch though.
I don't
Just
run
switch to
Arch.
Arch.
Connor.
There you go.
Proton Mail adding the calendar is really intriguing to me because I think that when I look from like a business perspective, the only two things I really need are three things: contacts, email, and calendar. I don't need all the office stuff or any of that. Like I just really, that's the core set. So if I had that on Proton Mail, that would be an option.
Yep. A Big Pod, you've been waiting.
Well, I use Gmail because while I do not trust Google, I do think that they will get my data. So why not I get at least some service from them? But if I went away from Google, I'll probably host my own because you can't really trust anything that's hosted by someone else in reality of it all.
Well, so here's my take on that. So yes, they're going to get data from you in some way, some form, however, depending on your security level. But I think that there also has to be that pushback from us to make it harder for them to get that data. We have to do certain things as people. Otherwise, when we take the attitude of they're going to get it anyway, and we might as well just give it to them, then we allow them to do what the ultimate goal is, and that is getting all of your data all the time with no pushback whatsoever. So I think that although I use Gmail because I have a YouTube account and everything, you try to limit it as much as you possibly can with as many services as you can so that there is that level of they just don't have everything automatically.
Can I kind of ask one more like sub question as part of that, like limiting things going through email and whatnot? This is kind of like a separate problem that's I think is connected to the first. Let's say you do have like more secure email or you have like a more sort of private setup. What to do about like more public services, like giving out your email address to stupid companies who have a list of things and don't know how to keep a hold of them, and then you end up with like an email full of crap after you've made it all nice.
Well, if you use a service like Proton Mail, for example, they have aliases that you can add to your account. And if you seem to be getting spam from that email that you gave out, you can just delete it and it will stop coming in from your inbox.
I like this. Cut off the head of the snake.
Yep.
Yeah, and one thing
things. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I might mention here is a lot of people kind of throw around just hosting your own email service. When I said I've been in IT for 20 years, probably 10 to 15 years, all the headaches I had was from mail. Hosting your own email service is not trivial, and it's something that is an absolute nightmare to deal with. I would rather pay $200 a year to just pay anybody else to do it, even though I have the complete knowledge, the skill, everything to do it, than to actually do my own email server. So anybody out there that I always get the question, hey, what about me doing my own email service? You should do a video on hosting your own email service. And I'm like, no, no way. Because a lot of times
you should. We should collaborate and do a video about hosting your email client. And the end of it is, or the beginning of it is like,
hosting email is the devil.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it all is like you have.
He froze.
A lot of unknown factors. And then on top of that, whether the ISP is going to block port 25, you're going to have to push it through a different. There's a lot of things that go into it that most people just don't take into consideration. And everyone's going to have a different experience at the end of the day, but it's not going to be a good one. That's probably much the one consistent thing that's going to come out of hosting your own email server. So email, I just treat as none of it's secure. I don't care if it's Proton. I don't care whatever it is. I just treat it all like, hey, anybody in the world can read this. And then I go about my day. If I'm sending something very sensitive, I just typically don't ever use email because it's just not a good place to either store anything sensitive or keep track of it, because even when you're hosting your own, there's still a lot of security problems depending on what you're using. But it's I just wanted to say that just as a caveat to anybody listening. Don't do it. and it's a complete nightmare. It's not something fun.
Well, I would love to continue the conversation, but we are out of time. There's so much that I would like to get into with that, and that also includes whether or not, POP3 or POP or
IMAP.
IMAP. I know that I use
IMAP.
I know that I use IMAP. I know that my dad still uses POP3 because he doesn't want emails on the server and stuff like left on the server and stuff like that. So I would definitely like to get into that. Maybe we'll get into that in the 8 o'clock show. Who knows? But we are out of time. But everybody gets a last word. PZ.
Well, it's great to see everybody here. I think this is one of the largest BDLL Europes that I've seen. So thank you very much for coming out at a sensible hour and joining us all here. I love seeing you people. I love chatting to you people. And having said that, I'll see you other nutters at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Bill, last word, brother. Bill.
I'm sorry. I'm just playing around with stuff. I'll see you guys later.
All right, man. Chicken.
Thank you for having me. I think this is the first Europe edition I've been on, and you know what? It was pretty cool. You guys are awesome. So,
yeah.
See you guys later tonight.
All right. Troy, last word, brother.
I'm not really sure what I want to say.
You don't have to say anything. Okay. Aris, last word.
Thank you, Rocco, and everybody who makes BDLL possible. It was a great stream.
Leo.
Hey, thanks for letting me come crash the European party. I appreciate that. But I did have one last point on that Google thing, and I'll make it super quick. The whole reason that I don't use Google Chrome, or at least I use it to a minimum amount, is because once you sign into one thing, it vacuums everything up at that point. So it's got its eyeball on you at that point. So anyway, thank you guys again. I appreciate it.
Popey.
Hey, Rocco. Thanks again for hosting this. It's jolly good fun to sit and chew the fat with all my friends. I may see you at 1 a.m., but I'm plowing through the beer I got for my birthday, and it's probably not going to happen.
Happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday, Popey.
Thank you.
29 again, Popey. No? Okay. Tony, last word.
Which one?
Well, I normally call you the bearded wonder, so Tony.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Rocco. It's different, the European one, and just as much fun. Didn't have a lot to say tonight. Some of the conversation was a bit heavy for me, but I still enjoyed being here, and it's great to see everyone looking well. I will probably still be up as usual for the later one, so I look forward to seeing you all then. And those that are there, great. Those that are not, I'll be hearing you snoring in the distance.
Jill, last word.
Oh, I just want to say, everyone out there, stay healthy and safe. My place of work has been infected, so it's been very stressful. And but anyways, I just love being here at least once a month on the European edition, because I can make this one. And thank you again so much, Rocco and Zeb. It's nice to have you back.
Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, I love all of you.
Very nice.
My Linux family.
You know it. Eric Adams, last word.
Jill said it all for me. No, I love this. These days are great because this is my double shot of BDLL, so I get to do it now and do it again later.
Peter?
Absolutely great hanging out. As everyone says, this is my lug. I had a few people in the chat call me the food bank guy, and I totally don't mind that. I encourage it. I don't mind being called the food bank guy and being the representative.
Where's your sign, dude?
So keep on. Oh, it's here. So please keep on supporting your food banks. Support feedamerica.org in America.
Yes.
Just help us out, please. Thank you.
Big Pod, last word.
Thank you for having us Europeans at a normal hour, 9 p.m. CET. And I did like that Chris joined us. That was a nice addition. And if you want to come back again, that was really, really great having you. You add a different thinking to the whole thing.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Paul, first word and last word.
Yeah, first word. I need to get better barging in like Michael.
No one will get as good as Michael in barging in, so you got a long way to go, Paul, but you can definitely get a last word in.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this, Rocco. It's basically my monthly log meeting. I'm testing Ubuntu, and I urge everybody else to do the same and help them squash those last-minute bugs before release. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, Chris, last word, brother.
Thanks all for just having me on. It's great, Rocco, you putting this on for everybody. It's just fantastic. And happy birthday to Popey. And I wanted to give him a little birthday present here at the end. And it's really a question to him. And that is my biggest criticism of Ubuntu and why I say all the things I say about it is I say snaps make it slower. And I wanted him to have a last response to this. And I don't need to comment on it, but I at least wanted to hear his thoughts when I say snaps slow down Ubuntu, and why would you keep pushing more and more snaps?
It's software. Software has bugs, and bugs need fixing. That's it. It's just software.
Can I barge in here?
You have your last word, Michael.
Okay, fine.
You don't need to barge in. You're invited in for your last word.
All right, well, cool. First, I got three things now. I only had two. Now I got three.
I said last word, Michael.
Okay. I got three words that are connected with phrases.
Okay.
So the snaps thing is that some of the snaps are actually lighter and smaller than the regular versions. So, like, for example, if you install Discord, it's depending on where you get it from, it could be up to 160 megs, and then you get it from the snap, it's only 60 megs. So there is sometimes where it's actually better. Two, I wanted to challenge Chris to another debate on something very, very important, and that is Batman versus Green Lantern. Easily Green Lantern. So maybe that we could save that for another thing. But and finally, I hope Popey's birthday is tickety boo.
Nice. Joe, last word, brother.
I concur. It definitely would be Green Lantern that won. Also, Batman versus Spider-Man depends entirely on prep time. If it's out of the blue, you have to hand it to Spider-Man.
Bunch of haters.
I love it.
I'll try to be on the biddle later today as well.
That would be great,
talk
man.
a little bit more about the distribution Q4 OS.
Okay. Steve, last word.
Hey guys, I know I didn't say much. I just jumped in. I want to say hi to Jill. Hey Jill.
Oh, hey, Steve's very own.
So we'll catch you guys. We'll catch you guys tonight.
All right, man. Connor, last word.
Thank you all for letting me join again. I was on before, and I don't always make these, but when I do, it's very enjoyable. Nice meeting you, Chris. It was nice interaction with yourself. And I may be joining Popey. I have some rum and coke here, so I don't know if I'll be joining the 1EM, but we'll see. I will try to make it.
All right. I'm just going to call you Sai. Is that all right, Sai? Sai, are you there?
Yeah, thank you very much about the warm welcoming, Rocco. Thank you, Zeb. Please be safe all. I'm not going to join you for the next video, but I'm going to enjoy it with a coffee in the morning. So thank you.
Nice.
Keep safe.
Very nice.
Is that it?
Well, the next BDLL Europe will be May 9th, so you can join us then, Sai. Tony, Bearded Wonder, sir, last word.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Rocco. Thanks, Zeb and Eric, for hosting all this. It's great to have somewhere to come to, especially at the moment. We're restricted on where we can go. Just to echo what Mint Spider said, if you want to support your food bank in the UK, obviously it's a bit harder to actually donate in the supermarkets these days. So support our local charity is the Trussell Trust. So maybe bung them a couple of quid if you want to support your local food banks. And I won't be joining you at 1 o'clock my time this week because I've got something to do in the morning. That's why I jumped in today. And as you could see, there was 3 of us from Mintcast that were absent without leave from our pre-production meeting tonight, so we could join. So you're having a bad influence on us, Rocco.
Well, I am super glad you guys show up because it adds so much to the conversation. You 3 guys have added that extra to the conversation for the last few weeks. Chris, you added some today, and I love seeing all of you people here, Jill, Alan, Connor, and everybody else that I didn't name. But the people that you see on this version of BDLL is different than you see on the other versions of BDLL, and I think it's awesome because both are different and both are the same, and yet they both have good points about them. So, yeah, I love seeing you guys here. All right,
thanks, Rocco.
That's going to wrap it up. We will be back here in less than 3 hours to stream for the next show. That will be at 8 o'clock EDT. If you want to join us, you can. If you just want to watch, that's also fine too. We appreciate either way you're here. And until then, long live Linux.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.